Hey guys, and welcome back to the Duke Wisdom podcast. Today was a busy day. Sure was. You know, you're listening to this on Halloween, so happy Halloween, everybody. I hope everybody has a safe and fun night tonight. If you haven't already gone out and done some sort of Halloween activity over the weekend, that if you're dressing up, that kind of thing, man. If you've got a Duke costume, post a picture in that Duke costume, tag me in it. I don't know if anybody will do that, but I think that could be fun to see. But right before Halloween, UConn fans got a scare on Halloween Eve. And man, so did I. There's very few times during the week that I'm going to have my phone completely off my person and be awake. And from like 8 to 9 on Monday mornings is one of those times. I was, in the gym playing some volleyball and so we wrap things up and I walk over there back to my bag. I grab my phone and I see a Twitter notification from Joe Tipton and I see Cooper Flagg's name and I was like, you got to be kidding me. This dude just committed at like 8 something in the morning. And so I rush and get into my drafts where I already had a few tweets lying in wait. Figured that this news would be coming pretty soon. Seemed like the news was going to come Thursday, but in lieu of the events in Maine and the shooting in Maine, Cooper Flagg decided to keep attention on that event and push his decision back. One of the coolest ways I think anybody has ever committed to Duke in announcing it on the cover of Slam. I mean, that's very, very, very cool. He's on the cover of Slam 247. If you're not subscribed to the magazine, make sure to go pick one of those copies up. Great piece for any Duke collection, and support some sports writers, baby. Go pick up Slam magazine. Just a super dope way to make that commitment. It seems like from some of the stuff being said, Trilly Donovan saying it, that UConn was that they made themselves a player, that they asserted themselves in Cooper Flagg's recruitment, but it was such an uphill battle. I mean, Cooper Flagg and his whole family, with their history of being Duke fans, it was always probably a losing battle for anybody getting involved. Kudos to UConn for trying their hardest, and kudos to the fans for truly believing in that program. They're building something special there. They're a really good team, and Duke fans probably don't want to hear that from me right now, given the recent feuding on Twitter between the fan bases. But Duke ends up prevailing in this. There's no reason to hold grudges against the UConn fans for this. Cooper Flagg's a Blue Devil. He's one of many number 1 overall recruits to commit to Duke. Just in recent memory, I think Derek Lively actually fell off the one line. By the end of the season, he ended up being the number 2 recruit, was the number 1 for a while. You had Dariq Whitehead as the number 3, Kyle is the number 4, Paulo number 2. And so many of these guys have been landed during the Shire era, and John Shire has continued this recruiting legacy. For anybody who said recruiting would fall off post Coach K, they didn't realize that the Duke brand had been built up so much in the last 40 years that it exceeded Coach K. He was the one that helped build the brand to its massive stature, and he built it to such a place that it exceeds even his large stature. Duke basketball's brand now is bigger than Coach K, and I think that's something that is difficult for certain fan bases to wrap their head around. Of course, anyone that still thought that recruiting would dip down for Coach K didn't know how deep John Shire was into the recruiting bag even before he became the head coach. And then, of course, there's that one tweet that we always have to relish anytime a guy like this commits to Duke. The guy that said that Grayson Allen was hurting Duke's recruiting. You hate to see it. I mean, since that tweet went out, Duke has landed Marvin Bagley, Trey Jones, Zion Williamson, RJ Barrett, Cam Reddish, Vernon Carey, Paulo Banchero, AJ Griffin, Mark Williams, Jeremy Roach, Derek Lively, Kyle Filipowski, Dariq Whitehead, Jared McCain, Cooper Flagg, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's so many guys, and this program is so tremendously successful recruiting wise. It's honestly pretty ludicrous. It really is. But it was a big thing to see Cooper Flagg commit this morning and finally make that official, becoming a Blue Devil. And I think that there are certainly questions about how he fits in the class and, how that'll affect VJ Edgecombe's recruitment. And if Edgecombe commits, how does that affect the players already committed? There's a couple of things of discourse created from the Athletics Duke and UNC beat writer Brendan Marks. So Brendan said that, Duke's not done. Clearly, they're not done. Still a major player for Harper and Ngongba. He seems to imply that he thinks Duke a bigger player for Harper and Ngongba than for Edgecombe. He thinks maybe that one of the pre-existing 6'5", 6'6" wings would need to decommit for an Edgecombe commitment. I can see a world in which that happens. There's a lot of traffic coming in at those positions. I've always thought Edgecombe was the least likely of the three guys that visited at Countdown. I don't know how I feel about Dylan Harper. Right now, I think there's just nothing happening in the Dylan Harper commitment. And I think if a commitment happens sooner, it is certainly not going to be Duke. If a commitment's happening in April, Duke's maybe the team to get him, because if he waited that long, he's probably waiting on Foster and McCain's decisions. And so then Duke could be a big player. If he makes a commitment before then, I'd wager my bet hard that he's going to Rutgers. So I'm going to kind of table the Dylan Harper discussion for a little bit. I do think, Patrick Ngongba's commitment coming up on November 4th, I expect it to be to Duke. I'm not going to say it's a shoo-in or anything. That is my projection, though. So that commitment coming on Saturday between Duke, Kentucky, and Kansas State. But back to some of that discourse with Cooper Flagg and then how that affects VJ Edgecombe, and can Edgecombe really become a Blue Devil? But I think the other piece of sort of a controversial take that Marks put out earlier today was that he said that Cooper Flagg might actually be a bigger commitment and hyped up player than Zion Williamson, that he might actually be the biggest one that Duke has landed. And I thought that was a really interesting take. I want to find the exact words. He said, here's the exact words. He said, "I would argue Flagg is coming into college with more hype, or at least more widespread name brand recognition than Zion, or even Paulo Banchero. Different games, though. Zion is obviously the better athlete, but Flagg is a much better defender, and I'd argue finished product." I mean, it's possible that Cooper Flagg's a better finished product. I'm not even going to try to debate who's the better player between he and Zion Williamson. I think that's completely aside the point. I'm not going to debate who's better between he and Paulo Banchero. I think he's certainly higher hyped than Banchero. I think Banchero was really hyped in the NBA draft universe. He was a very highly acclaimed player by scouts. I don't think, when Paulo committed to Duke, it wasn't groundbreaking news. He committed fairly early, but it wasn't groundbreaking news. And I don't think that people really realized a whole lot about him until right before he came into Duke. I don't think the hype around Paulo was even top 3 or even top 5 of the modern recruiting era, which I would call since Duke's been getting a bunch of one and dones. I would say that Jaleel Okafor and Tyus Jones were more hyped up than Paulo was. I think certainly Jabari Parker was I mean, people we're having a little bit of a short memory here. Jabari Parker was phenomenally hyped. He covered Slam or Sports Illustrated multiple times in high school and 5 times at Duke. I mean, he had 8 or 9 magazine covers through his rookie season in the NBA. He was extremely hyped at every single level. I mean, his cover of Sports Illustrated with him playing at Simeon High School, he's literally says, "Is he the next LeBron?" And so I think that's a big name that we're looking past. I think Jason Tatum was pretty hyped, but I think his hype became a lot larger once he got to Duke, although still very much a hyped player in high school. Had his own song. Come on. Duke's had some really hyped players, and I think Cooper Flagg is toward the top of that list I, however, don't think that he's even in the stratosphere of Zion Williamson. I think if you got, 10 random people that watch sports and you're like, who's Cooper Flagg? A decent amount of them would know who Cooper Flagg is. If you did that back in 2018 with Zion Williamson, they'd be like, oh, the dude with the dunk mixtape? Like, Zion Williamson's recognition and notoriety was unreal. When Cooper Flagg committed to Duke, I was like, man, that's really cool. And I'm like, that's going to be must-see television. He's going to be an absolute stud. Zion Williamson was just like unfathomable. It was like the amount of attention that Duke was going to get because of Zion and the amount of attention they got because of Zion was unfathomable. I think that where Brendan's coming at this is that Cooper Flagg is the guy in 2024, that there's no one really rivaling him in terms of popularity and hype. And so it seems like he's just got all the attention for this class. Zion was sort of sharing that with RJ and Cam. But even if he was sharing it with RJ and Cam, I actually think that them going to Duke boosted him up even more and even further. I mean, Drake was wearing his jersey. He was just an unbelievable high. I actually think Jabari Parker was also more hyped than Cooper Flagg was, even he's in a social media era, and social media's gotten so much bigger. But I think that Zion Williamson and then probably Jabari Parker are still the top two most hyped high school players to commit to Duke. And I think Cooper Flagg's got an argument for third. There's a lot of competition there. And people could argue with me either way on that. But I think that that's an interesting discussion to be had. Certainly a happy day for a lot of Duke fans with the commitment of Cooper Flagg, Patrick Ngongba's commitment on the horizon. And with that, I'll leave the recruiting talk and get more into this year's team.
Want to join a community of Duke accounts publishing news, theories, and predictions on Duke athletics? Join the Duke Wisdom Network. Just go to dukewisdom.org/join network today and fill out the form with your name and social media. Or you can DM at Duke_wisdom on Twitter or Instagram. Become a part of the community of Duke fans publishing their takes today. Again, that's dukewisdom.org/join network or DM at Duke_wisdom on Twitter or Instagram.
So there was a secret scrimmage, a not so secret scrimmage, this weekend against number 22 Villanova. That results have remained curiously secret. I know that sounds ironic given it's a secret scrimmage, but in years past, pretty immediately after Duke played scrimmage against Villanova 2 years ago, it was known that Duke won the game in a blowout. Last year, it didn't take long to find out the exact score of the Houston-Duke game and that Duke had lost. So I don't think that whether Duke won or lost has anything to do with the score not being leaked. I think they're just playing it close to the chest. I've heard seen from a lot of people that Duke may have fallen short in the game, but ultimately Filipowski played phenomenally. Jeff Goodman said that. He also said that he heard Jared McCain and Caleb Foster played well, which is nice to hear. And then you've heard the reports that Duke won handily even. I think it's possible that those reports could be muddled to where maybe Duke did win handily in like the first half and then didn't in the second because weird lineup combinations, and these scrimmages are just teams trying to get their footing. It's nothing too serious. But honestly, I don't know how any or if you can really trust any of those reports. I'm not sure if we will get the opportunity to see what the score was. Honestly, it's been, a few days now since it happened. It kind of seems like we might not get the score. And that's fine, I think. Like, I've got no problem with not seeing the score. I think that it is a very good game to play for Duke to get a bunch of experience. And I think that it will benefit them a lot in the long run playing a top 25 team before the season starts. But talking about some scrimmages, there's been a lot of charity scrimmages. That's something I think Duke should get into next year, is playing charity scrimmage, maybe in Cameron or somewhere, in North Carolina in the Greensboro Coliseum, something like that. But drawing a big crowd, getting really hyped up because these games have been really fun to watch, and they've been challenging my top 25. My number 5 and 6 teams, Michigan State and Tennessee, played. Tennessee got the better. of MSU, who Duke will play. Kansas lost to Illinois. Number 1 Kansas lost to number 25 Illinois, which was interesting, certainly. And then Arkansas, just packed out their stadium in what's probably a preview of what it'll look like when Duke comes to town. They knocked off number 3 Purdue. There have been some really high quality matchups, and it seems like the lower ranked teams win in everything. Florida Atlantic lost like another game. They're not looking too great. I'm feeling pretty good about ranking them way lower than the top 10. So a lot of interesting scrimmages and a lot of interesting things to look at in terms of how these top 25 teams are really stacking up. And I don't know how much stock you can really hold in these, but we are officially, from the time I'm recording this, a week out from day 1 of the regular season. Duke will match up with Dartmouth. I'll talk more about that Dartmouth game on Thursday, and I will also recap the UNC Pembroke exhibition, which I'm very hyped for. So UNC Pembroke last season, I think, was like 26-4. So a solid team. Obviously not a Division I opponent, and exhibitions never are. Shouldn't struggle to win the game if you're Duke. If they are, that's a big red flag that they might have some early season struggles. I wouldn't expect to see that. I don't know exactly what to expect, in terms of how big of a blowout it should be. There's always you want to win by as much as possible. The 2018-19 Duke team won by like 80-something. Never expect to win by 80-something, but expect, a solid showing and to see a bunch of different lineup combinations and see these guys getting their footing. I'm especially interested to see how the freshmen play. I'm especially interested to see who the 5th starter is. And I'm especially interested to see how Christian Reeves plays, not in Countdown to Craziness. Are they going to pursue using Christian Reeves in a similar fashion to how they used him at Countdown to Craziness? Are they going to seek him out in the same ways? Or is he just going to kind of come in with the second string, fade in, and be forgotten? I hope that's not the case. And I really hope that they look to use Sean Stewart in a similar way as Reeves when he comes into the games. I hope the freshmen get big roles in that game so we can see what they're all about and get them more run before it's officially official against Dartmouth. Like to see Power and Stewart get a lot of time on the court. Like to see McCain and Foster get time together, and then with Proctor and with Roach as well, see different lineup combinations with those guards. I don't want to see all the time Roach and Proctor in the backcourt and then McCain and Foster come in for them. I'd like to see some Roach Foster, some Roach McCain, some Proctor Foster, some Proctor McCain. I want to see some different lineup combos, or 3 out of 4 of them for 3-guard lineups is something that can certainly happen. I want to see that beast of a performance that Kyle Filipowski allegedly had against Villanova. I want to see that in person. I want to see more of those aggressive high-flying dunks like the one he threw down at Countdown, 2-hip flip in full action. I want to see that 3-point shooting in full effect. That's something I'm looking forward to. I want to see just how good of a 3-point shooting team this team really is. I don't think we saw it at Countdown. We saw a glimpse of it. Jeremy Roach certainly shot the ball well. I think Proctor could shoot it better. I think McCain's going to shoot very well during the season. They didn't really show at Countdown. So many shooters, so many weapons. I'm really looking forward to seeing all of that coming together. And of course, the season on the horizon. I don't feel like I need to do a whole lot of, opponent preview against Pembroke because it's Pembroke. And, it's not like there's a Ken Palm ranking and I need to do a big statistical analysis. Man, maybe I will if they give Duke a hard time. Never say never. I think it was Northwest, like Missouri, might even be Northwest Missouri State that gave Duke trouble back before the 2019-2020 season. Almost had a heart attack during that one. It was like a 6-point game. So hopefully we don't see anything like that. But exhibition on Wednesday, this Wednesday. Dartmouth game upcoming on Monday. We have a set decision date for Patrick Ngongba on November 4th. That's something certainly to look forward to. And of course, Duke fans bask in the glory of landing yet another number 1 player in Cooper Flagg. You talk about in terms of players that have been ranked either at some point for most of the season or at the end of the season. You're talking Cooper Flagg, class of 2024, Derek Lively, 22. Zion Williamson at a point in 18, but then mostly R.J. Barrett in 2018, Marvin Bagley in 17, Harry Giles in 16, Jaleel Okafor in 14. Duke has had tremendous success landing the most coveted player in recruiting classes, and that has not changed with John Shire at the helm. I don't think it's going to change. They have a very good chance at landing one of the top players in the country next year in Cameron Boozer. And that is something I'm looking forward to, is the sort of attention shift to the class of 25. Once Ngongba commits, Duke's looking at VJ Edgecombe, and I think in the long term is looking at Harper if he remains uncommitted for a while. But they can shift most of their attention from that point, because those are the only two question marks. They're not actively going out and trying to look for anybody else, hosting a lot of visits, nothing like that. They can then shift their attention, and they already have been. They've been doing at-home visits with players for the class of 25, and they can really hunker down and try to build that 2025 class, which I think will be should be another big one as well. Big things going on, and a big week ahead of us for Duke basketball. Thanks so much for listening. As always, guys, make sure to follow at Duke_wisdom on Twitter and Instagram. Go to dukewisdom.org to check out some articles, see the podcast page, and hopefully we'll have some more new articles coming in. We've had some new writers expressing interest, and if you want to join the Duke Wisdom Network, become a writer, hey, go to dukewisdom.org/join network. You hear the ad read every episode. Thanks for listening. Make sure to follow the pod, and I'll talk to you guys Thursday.